Hi, this is John Bandler. I'm answering student questions. They're in a course that's using my Cyberlaw book, so I'm helping out. I'm not teaching this course, but the instructor, the professor, gave me the questions, so I'm going to answer them here for everybody. I'm fighting a cold, so my voice may sound weird, and I'm probably moving about 2 miles an hour, so you may want to listen to this at increased speed. Law is not just for lawyers. Cyber law is not just for lawyers. Everyone should know something about it. These are the chapters being covered this week. Some on contract law. They're covering regulation, but I don't think I got any questions on that. A little on intellectual property. They just started covering that, and I think they have more of it next week. So here's a little bit why I think law is for everybody. We can't live in a nation of laws where only lawyers know about the law. I wrote this book on cyber law because I use it to teach with, and it has a lot of introductory law on it too. So these are quick and off the cuff answers. So you're going to see a disclaimer later. In my courses, the last question on the assignment invites a question from the student to me, and this instructor has that too, so we get a lot of questions. So this is how the book is set up, all these parts, and we're in part 5 on what I call civil cyber law, part 1, and we got all these cool parts of the book. It's modular. You can read it straight through or just go to the section that interests you. If you're taking it for a course, you should be reading it all the way through. It builds on each other. Don't forget those chapter resource pages on my website, freely available for everyone. Here's the disclaimers. I'm talking fast. I may make mistakes about facts or law, and I give my personal opinion too, because I can. I think it makes it interesting too. Here's the first question. How does fair use apply when AI companies scrape copyrighted content to train their models, and where do the courts currently stand on that? So fair use refers to a defense to what could be a copyright violation. So copyright generally says don't copy protected content. You're not allowed to. Someone wrote that or authored that, or a movie was fixed into film or DVD. Don't copy it. You have to buy the original. Well, fair use allows you to copy a little bit of it for certain purposes. And I think there's another question coming later about that. So how does fair use apply when AI companies are scraping up all this copyrighted content out there? Where do courts currently stand on that? Well, there are cases in progress. So if you're reading the book, this is an excerpt from the book. I copied it. It's my copyright. I'm showing it to you. But it's talking about the New York Times lawsuit against ChatGPT, OpenAI, and others, alleging, hey, you violated our copyright. You're not allowed to use all our articles to train your models. Like, that's not what they're designed for. If people want to see our New York Times articles, we want them to go to our site and get a subscription. Obviously, the defense is, hey, fair use, it's out there. We're doing it for all these good purposes. What we're going to use is going to be transformative. So the courts have not resolved this yet. There have been other cases here and there, but I still think it's an open question. The creators, the copyright owners, what are they saying? They're saying this is not fair use. They're saying we put all our sweat and time and money invested into creating this work. It has financial value for us. We want people to pay for the subscription. We want them to buy the DVD. We want them to go see it in the theaters. And if people are allowed to copy it, even for this AI purpose, there's not going to be incentives for creators to create. And that's one of the purposes of the copyright law. Now, the AI companies, they say it's fair use, it's lawful. They give their reasons why. Oh, we're not totally copying it totally. We're just giving excerpts. We're summarizing the information. But I think it is still an open question. And then I've got the footnote. And just remember, so if you want to read more about these, you can see the footnote. You can see things more recently. So this is, I believe, chapter 28, and we revisit it in chapter 33. Okay, our next question here. I just want to probe further about tools, ways, means that students can best move from level 2 to higher levels of understanding these important topics. Of course, memorizing and summarizing terms is manageable, but the next stage would be to apply the concepts in real cases or technology issues. So they're referring to my concept of scaffolding or layering in some of the assignments or my quizzes, and the way the book is written and my website articles is I want to make sure people get that first level of learning. I give them those simple concepts first, level 1. Then I might transition to level 2 with a little more explanation. And then there's obviously higher levels of learning. If you want a college education, graduate level, law school education, you've got to move yourself beyond that. And a lot of that, obviously, it's always in the hands of the student, the learner. And there's no magic tools, right? The main tool is your brain, and that's the tool you are trying to build. And your curiosity, your learning, your desire to build your skills, knowledge, and analytical ability, I think you kind of got to look to yourself and that practice, the effort, the struggle that you're giving yourself. And then you're thinking how to apply these concepts, including legal concepts, to other areas. Now, those level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 type learning things are harder to assess in a course. Now, and very hard to assess in a weekly assignment or in a short quiz. Like these level 1 and 2 things, that you can assess in an assignment as long as the student's doing it honestly with honest effort. In class quiz, you can assess. Courses I teach, I have a semester-long paper project. That's where students have an ability to really dive in and get to those higher levels of learning. An oral presentation or an interview or an oral exam is another way to assess that, but those things are pretty time-consuming to do and also difficult to assess. So that's why when I teach, and also in the book, chapter 3, I emphasize how important it is that students take charge of their own learning, putting in that honest effort and looking to get themselves not just level 1 or 2, which is, like I said, easy for instructors to assess, but make sure they get themselves to higher levels. And like I said, students are in charge of their own learning. No one can give you an education. You have to take it. So I try to motivate students with that. What do you think the most interesting job that covers cyber law material is what they mean. What's the most interesting job on cyber law? Well, I can only speak based on what I know. Being a cybercrime prosecutor, that was very exciting. I was in charge of the case. You read about it in chapter 19, I think it was, the Western Express case. I was able to do so much, investigate so much, analyze. It was really great. And I think the other great job, I guess, is being in cyber law, is writing about it, teaching about it, and creating and trying to show other people how important law is and that cyber's all around us and law is all around us. What do you think the most common contract is? The type of contract that the most people have been involved in? Credit cards? Cell phone contracts? Short answer, I have no idea. So common by most people, I guess, a lot of people have a rent contract. A lot of people do have a credit card or a cell phone. I guess a lot of people have all these other annoying monthly subscriptions we seem to be stuck with in the cyber age. Those are contracts, I guess, right? I was thinking, though, common by most used, imagine like those trading contracts in the stock exchange or commodities exchange, where people are kind of executing a contract every time they trade. That might be the most by volume. I don't know. The reading has me thinking about just how many different types of contracts are out there. Yeah, absolutely. Contracts is that example of traditional law that's so important in our today's cyber world, which is everywhere. Okay, question. I'm curiously thinking about your IP law learning and the scaffolding method you described. Which type of intellectual property do you feel is easiest for you to grasp, and which one still feels tricky? For me, trade secrets are always interesting because they're less tangible than copyrights or patents, and the how to protect it in real life part adds complexity. All right, well, the word that got my attention is tangible, and I know what you mean, less tangible, but the whole thing about intellectual property is it's not the tangible type of property. It's intangible. It's intellectual property. Do I feel is easiest to grasp or complex? I think what I try to do in the book is for each area IP law and every area law, I try to give everybody that simplest level that everybody can grasp. So I hope I did that, and I hope we see each of these areas has that simple level, but I also hope we see each area law and intellectual property law gets immensely complex, like more complex than I could even imagine. I don't even practice in intellectual property law. We're talking scaffolding a lot today, I guess, too. One way to increase your level of learning is when you research and write about it. So I've written and taught about intellectual property, so I think I'm at a pretty high level of learning on intellectual property, but still, again, not enough to practice it. I guess copyright's the simplest, though, right? Lately, I've been wondering how we can connect cyberlaw with hands-on skills like cybersecurity or IoT, Internet of Things work. I feel like learning both together would make everything more practical and easier to relate to. It would help me see how the legal side actually fits into real-world tech situations instead of feeling like two separate things. So I think my first thought for you would be like, what do you mean by hands-on skills? So maybe you can follow up with your professor next assignment submission, answer my question, give a little more. So what do you mean by hands-on skills and learning, and what would that be? Do you mean like configuring a cybersecurity software, or scanning a network, or you're planning the structure of a network? I'm not sure what you mean. So provide a little more. And then I guess the next thing, I would want to encourage you to try to expand your mind, expand your thinking, imagine, be creative, because there are these real-world technology, cyber law, cybersecurity issues all around us. We discuss them in the book. They're on my website. We see them in the news all the time, and you can also just think them up yourself. There's no limit here. And the law has what's called hypothetical situations. I talk about that in the book in part 1, which allows us to take any set of facts, real or imagined, and imagine how the law would be applied to that. Science has that too. It's called a thought experiment. Scientists do it too. And, anybody, curiosity, imagination, you can do that. Engage your brain, see what you come up with. Imagine the legal issues that come up in life with technology. And it's in the news too. And I was also having trouble seeing how you would do that in a course, or why you would want to. So imagine I'm teaching the law of, let's say, automobile negligence. I'm trying to teach people about negligence and car crashes and who's at fault and how to do a civil case on that. Would I really need to take people driving to help them understand that? Like I would want to make sure they know how cars work and what the traffic laws are, but I don't think I'd need to take them driving. If they wanted to learn driving, like there'd probably be another instructor and another course well suited for that. So follow up with your instructor on that. See if that helps. Copyright question. Copyright law protects certain works from improper copying, but what necessarily makes some copying improper and other instances proper? And that comes down to the fair use exemption we talked about. In general, copying says if it's protected, you're not allowed to copy it. And one way you know it's protected is someone puts the copyright warning on it. And there's other circumstances. Just because it doesn't say copyright on it doesn't mean it's fair game to steal it and present it as your own. Now, there's that fair use exemption that says some copying is okay. It's okay if you quote it and cite it to talk about it. That's okay. It's okay to copy a short bit to critique it or discuss it. That's okay. You get more latitude for nonprofit or educational use. So if a teacher is giving a larger chunk of it and, it's nonprofit, it's educational, that's okay. That said, you can only go so far with that, because if you're copying a textbook for educational use, that's not okay, because the whole point of that textbook is that it's going to be purchased or rented for the use of that course. And if you copy it to pass it off as your own work, that's not okay. And if you have that intent to profit off it, that's not okay either. And that brings us back to that New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI, ChatGPT. They're saying, hey, that's your business model. You're sucking up all this copyrighted work because you want to make a profit off it. That's not fair. Of course, that's still to be decided. Question: in real-world cyber incidents like the CrowdStrike case, how often do courts actually enforce limitational liability clauses strictly, even when the damages are extremely large? Similar question: how strictly do courts enforce limitation of liability clauses in large cyber incidents when damages are very high? All right, so it's hard to really answer this question, and we got to remember that each lawsuit is unique, right? You have different parties, different lawyers, different pocketbooks, different motives going on. So it'd be hard to generalize. It's hard to say for sure. I'm sure someone could spend hundreds of hours researching how these come out. But we also have to remember, when you enter into a contract, parties may insert a limitation of liability clause as they're negotiating that contract to try to reduce their risk if there is a lawsuit. Then if it gets to the point where there is going to be a lawsuit, now each side has lawyers, and the party bringing the lawsuit is looking for ways to maximize their damages. So when you get to the litigation, each side is making their arguments, and you got different resource lawyers. Some are better than the other. The facts are always different in each case, and then the judge is just a human making a decision. So I would just say there's no magic answer in law. If there's a magic answer in this instance for this question, I really doubt it. I sure don't know it. But when you get to litigation, it becomes a battle. You make the claims you can, and sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And a lot of times those cases settle anyway. And when they settle, both sides claim victory anyway, right? So that is the end of the questions. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If I answered your question, let your professor know so they know you watched this, or find some other way to let your professor know you watched this all the way through. I do love answering questions that are genuine from the student's mind. I'm going to put links and references in the description if you want to find how to learn more about cyber law, including my resources page. That's where that QR code takes you. Thanks for watching and listening. Take care.